Hi guys, I hope everybody had a great spring break um, and welcome back. We are going to start a new unit on weathering. So it's Unit 5, Lesson 1. So I wanted to give you kind of an overview of how school will progress moving forward. We made some changes right before spring break. So from this point forward, we will be having about 90 minutes a week of science. And we're hoping that you'll only have to do that Monday through Thursday, using Friday as kind of a makeup day. But we're going to go ahead and give you all of your assignments on Monday, and then you can kind of work at your own pace, and then those will be due on Friday. So for this week, April 13th through 17th, the first thing you're going to do is watch the mechanical and chemical weathering video, which you are watching right now. And you're going to fill in your closed notes. Those are these notes. I had a link to it. Hopefully you can print those out. I also put some other links on there for things that will be coming up soon. If you have a chance to get those printed, or if your parents can get them printed at work, that would be great. There's only, I think, 3 or 4 of them. The second thing you're going to do this week is to complete a weathering web quest. And you can see there's the link for the web quest. You can get it off my website. This is straight from my website. And then the final thing, which is where you will get your grade this week, this is going to be graded, is through a Quizzes. And there's the code there, 332719. Okay, so our new standard for this unit is for you to develop a model to demonstrate how natural processes such as weathering, erosion, and deposition, and human activity can change rocks and the surface of Earth. And so this lesson today, we're going to focus on the weathering part. How does weathering change the surface of Earth? Okay, and your ticket out the virtual door today is, I want you to be able to answer, how does weathering change Earth's surface? And I'm hoping that you'll be able to give a couple of examples for that. If you need it, this PowerPoint goes along with pages 384 to 393 in your book if you have any questions. You can, of course, contact me, or if you want to look in your book, it's straight from that. So the first thing we want to ask is, what is weathering? So I know we've all been to the beach, and if you think about that beach sand that's on the beach, it may have once been part of a large boulder. So over millions of years, the boulder can break down into many smaller pieces. So the breakdown of rock material by physical and chemical processes is what we call weathering. And so there are 2 main types of weathering, and we're going to look at both of those today. The first one is physical weathering, and the second one is chemical weathering. So for physical weathering and chemical weathering, I want you to think back to 5th grade when you learned about physical changes and chemical changes. So we know that a physical change is just, it looks different. The composition has not changed. So in physical weathering, the rock composition stays the same, but it might look different. So physical weathering is the breakdown of rock into smaller pieces by physical changes. And one way that can happen is by ice wedging. And if you look at this picture, what will happen is water can seep down into the rocks, and then of course it gets cold, and we know that ice expands when it freezes, so that can break rocks apart. So now the rock might look different, but it's still the same rock. That's why it's called physical weathering, not chemical. It's still the same composition. It might just now be in 2 pieces or 10 pieces or 1,000,000 pieces. Okay, another type of physical weathering is called abrasion. And that's where the breaking down and wearing away of rock material by the mechanical action of other rocks. So some examples of that would be by water. If you've ever been to a stream, you'll notice that a lot of the rocks are very round and smooth, and that's because over time they have tumbled and tumbled in the water, moving very fast for many, many, many years. So they weren't originally nice, smooth stones. That's happened over time. Another way is through wind, and rocks can be shaped by wind, blowing sand and chipping away at little parts. And another way is through gravity. I want you to think of a landslide. We know that if a big chunk of a mountain falls down, gravity is pulling that, and along the way lots of rocks get smashed and tumbled and crashed and broken apart. So that's another way that rocks can be weathered, is through gravity. So 3 types: water, wind, and gravity. Several other types of physical weathering are number 3 is the plant growth. I know we've probably all seen this when roots from trees get too close to the sidewalk, the roots start growing and they maybe break up the sidewalk. Again, it's physical because it's not changing the substance, it's just breaking it into different parts. Another type of physical weathering is because of animals. We call that animal action, especially when animals burrow through the soil, such as moles, and lots of different animals can do that. They can break up rocks as they go through, or create tunnels under rocks, and then the rocks sink and break. And we can also have physical weathering because of pressure changes. So sometimes rocks are formed deep underground. An example of this would be Stone Mountain. Stone Mountain was once level to the ground, and after maybe 15 million years, all of that stuff that was around the mountain has eroded and washed away, and we're left with the big granite dome that is Stone Mountain. So the top of that is kind of in parts is breaking off. You can see that a lot around the bottom. So when the pressure changes, the rock can crack, and then the surface, the pressure on the surface is less, so it kind of starts breaking up. All right, so the second type of weathering we're going to talk about is chemical weathering. So just like a chemical change, a new substance is formed. So in this case, if we're talking about chemical weathering of rocks, a new type of rock is formed. So chemical weathering changes both the composition and the appearance of rocks. So chemical weathering is when the breakdown of rocks happens because of chemical reactions. So the agents of the chemical reactions include oxygen in the air and acids that are in our air as well. So the first type of chemical weathering we'll talk about is oxidation. So that's when iron in the soil reacts with oxygen. So we know that when chemicals combine with oxygen, it's called oxidation. And iron combines with oxygen, and that equals rust. So sometimes we'll see a rock change color, and that can mean that a chemical reaction is taking place. So especially rocks that contain iron can easily undergo chemical weathering. The iron in rocks and soil combines with oxygen once it's dissolved in water, and the result is a rock that can turn reddish orange, and that is rust. So a lot of our soil here in Georgia is kind of reddish orange, and we know that's clay, but the majority of that color comes from oxidation. Okay, another type of chemical weathering is when we have acid rain. We call that acid precipitation. Lots of air pollution is caused by this, where we burn the fossil fuels in a lot of our factories, our cars, our airplanes. That creates chemical reactions in our atmosphere. And when we have precipitation or rain, that comes back down to Earth, and that can dissolve our rocks and minerals. It can also cause chemical reactions, which will change the composition of some of our rocks. Another type of chemical weathering would be reactions with acid in the groundwater. So if we have a rock with a crack in it, the acid from the acid rain can actually dissolve spaces in the rock, and eventually over millions of years can create those underground caves like we saw in a video that we watched prior. Those can create underground rivers, and that's what also forms our stalactites and stalagmites, as seen here, is from cracks in the water dripping down with different minerals in it, and it deposits the minerals from the top, and it also builds up from the bottom. We also can have chemical weathering when we have a reaction with acid that's in living things. For example, in this picture, you can see lichens. This is like a moss type that will grow on rocks, and as it grows, it secretes an acid that will eventually break down the rock. It'll form cracks, and it can dissolve different rocks, so it changes the substance. All right, well, I hope that you enjoyed learning about weathering. And just a reminder, your ticket out the virtual door is, how does weathering change Earth's surface? I'm hoping that you will be able to tell a few ways that physical weathering can change, and also how chemical weathering can change Earth's surface. All right, I hope to see you next week. Please give me a call, text me. We can set up a Zoom if you have some questions. I'd love to see your face. Take care, guys. Bye.